Hey, we got Mark back. We lost you for a second.
Yeah, I got a
Right.
phone call from my warehouse guy. So
All good now?
yeah,
All right. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Huddle, your weekly playbook where I tell my brother that I can still hear myself in his microphone.
I'm talking loud.
I'm talking normal. Paul's not here. He had some emergency stuff to do with one of the projects that he's on, so it's just us today, Mark.
not a problem. I'm sure I could rattle on enough.
Oh, I figured that much. That's why I invited you.
I know
I'm
what it
good at
is.
that.
No, because we didn't want to do the same topic that we were going to do because Paul kind of runs the blue collar crews, right? So I was like, hey, the last time we talked, well, I seen you on Facebook. You were talking about trying to get everyone from the training organizations so that way you can talk to them about just in general, like who is even out there, I think, right? Trying to get a
Yeah,
list together.
yeah. I was writing an article for the CFI magazine. I'll probably give it to Beth also at Floor Trends and Installation um, about the need for trainings, but also to list what's out there so guys have an idea of what's actually out there um, to make it easier on them to find all that information.
Right. Because, I mean, how are you gonna get trained if you don't know what's out there, right?
Exactly. And it's not even just like all your organizations like CFI, NWFA, the NTCA, but the free stuff the manufacturers offer also.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna kind of get at too. It's like when we talk about education, it's not just going to a certification or anything. Education comes in many forms, right? And you already mentioned a couple of the magazines. I mean, you talk about just educating yourself from those. It's better than not reading anything and thinking that you know everything.
Yeah, yeah. My wife yells at me all the time. I'm on my phone all the time, but I'm reading those magazines and articles and everything related to our industry. Um, she thinks I'm into it too much, but it's what makes you a professional. You
It,
know,
that
it's
is what it is what makes you a professional. It's also what separates you when you when you care about what you do and you care about you just care. Period. You're gonna investigate. You're gonna find something that you like an article. You're gonna read it, and then you're gonna come up with your own ideas from that article or from somebody's information. It
yeah,
doesn't have
cause,
to relate.
yeah, because a lot of the people who do know me, and when we go to trainings or the conventions or anything like that, you're always going to have questions, and with the, products and materials and everything rapidly changing, you got to have questions and who are you going to ask? It's, and that's where all these trainings do come in handy. It just elevates you and, the industry in itself.
Right. And even as like we're in sales too, right? So as a salesperson, anytime there's an issue that comes up, I can actually go and just talk to these reps and be like, "Hey, this is kind of what's happening. What should I be doing?"
Yeah. And that's the other thing I'm trying to get to also in this article is you got to get to know your reps, because you could call the 800 number to a tech department or whatever for a manufacturer. You'll be lucky to get a call in a couple of days. And by then, it's too late. Knowing your reps, they're going to get information for you a lot quicker.
Yeah, a couple of days. How about a couple of weeks? I got a phone call into. I'll just. I don't know if I should throw them under the bus or not, but a German company who hasn't returned phone call or email.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. Because and that's what I did last weekend. I put out, I messaged a bunch of the organizations and the people I know. It's like, hey, I'm doing this questionnaire, 5 questions of what they offer and, when it's available, or can they just call up and, schedule something. And I'm still waiting on those responses. It's like, you want us to do these trainings, but you're not getting back to people quick enough. And, with the podcast, like the Huddle and everything, just, doing the research yourself, it's going to make it a little easier to have it out there in print where it's a little more accessible than trying to contact someone, that's already, trying to contact a manufacturer. Sometimes your reps are real busy or whatever, you don't get a call back or they forget to call you back. At least this will be in one or two spots in a couple magazines where, um, you'll have something to reference back to and have the, an email link or something like that to make it a little bit easier.
You had mentioned about researching yourself. So I'm one who likes to do that, right? And the benefit of that is now you just don't have someone talking at you or telling you. You're absorbing it, interpreting it yourself. You're going to retain it a lot easier. Not only that, is if you do research and then still need help from a rep, now you're at least on the same page and speaking the same language or closer to, and that helps come up with a solution a lot faster than just calling them saying, "Hey, I got this floor is going bad. I got this product that's not working. Well, what's the locking mechanism or what adhesive are you using? Whatever they sent." Yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't help them answer a question.
No.
And that's the thing. I'm self-taught in my career, and I do stuff, pick things up. Everybody has their failures as they're starting out and everything, and you learn from that. But you do your research because, yeah, you don't want to have to shell out the money to replace something or repair something, but you got to do that research so that doesn't happen again. And if you don't know the correct product to use, you could be like, okay, I'm going to use this specific adhesive for this product. Well, it might not be for the correct application. If you don't know their products and get trained on how to use their products correctly, they're not going to be
Well,
able
it's not even getting trained, right? It's just educating yourself and knowing that, hey, so story, Chris Cano texted me the other day and he's like, hey, I'm doing some of this sheet vinyl. They sent this adhesive. I don't think it's the right stuff. So I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's not the right stuff. It should be this. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna go and tell them. And then they came back and said, nope, talk to the salespeople. They said it's the right stuff. And he's like, man, I don't know what to do. So I was like, dude, just contact the manufacturer and see what's up. And
yeah.
sure enough, they said that, I mean, down to the material that he was installing wasn't the right stuff for the application. So it's just doing the research like that, like knowing enough education to know that, hey, something ain't right. It starts with one thing and then it kind of just balloons to everything else. And then you're just essentially protecting yourself and making sure that you're not going to have project failures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same kind of same instance. Last Saturday, Saturday morning, I was just sitting drinking my coffee, and I got a call from a guy out in Texas because he saw I just did the Lobovacal training, and he called me up. He's like, "Well, we're using this product, but we're having an issue." I'm like, "Well, it sounds like you didn't follow directions correctly or use the correct, you know." He used their moisture barrier, but then was using a different leveler over the top of it, and he didn't use the correct primer for it. So he called me, and I had an answer for him, but yeah, I called my rep and the tech guy, just to verify before I gave that information out. I didn't want to give him the wrong information, but that's where it's good to know your reps or your field tech, or even the guys who work in the labs and the tech department or something is because then they can give you that correct information, you know, and then, you know, he was able to go ahead, redo everything and not have an issue from that point. You know, so it's trainings isn't just about learning the information, it's also building those relationships with those companies, you know, and you're going to be more confident as an installer also, instead of, you know, like me, I have questions all the time. You know, I do trainings, I know a lot of the information, but it's more of, is this correct? You know,
Knowing that you don't know everything, right? And
yeah,
like you said, the technology changes so much that it could change from one pail to the other, and you don't know until you start reading into it.
yeah. And that's the most aggravating thing is, you know, the old saying, I've done it this way 30 years with no problems. You can't say that because just in the past 2 years, look at the changes in adhesives and the multiple different kinds of adhesives that are out there. You know, whether it's a urethane base, a waterborne, MS technology, an acrylic. You know, there's so many different products out there. You got to keep up on it. You know,
Right.
and then
Nate is
Like,
very correct.
right. Sometimes the correct answer is I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you.
yeah, yeah, and a homeowner is going to be a lot more understanding and have a lot more confidence in their installer when you do say something like that, or it's like, well, I've never run across this. Let me contact this person or whatever, you know, because a lot of homeowners are seeing what's done on like HGTV, watching YouTube videos, which are that's a whole nother conversation right there.
Right. And then they get mad when you don't just go in there and get their stuff done in a half hour because that's how long the show is.
Or they
Yeah,
base it off that commercial where the guy just rolls out a floating floor and the couch levitates and lands back on it.
Right. And
yeah,
then once you do start getting that education and then knowing your reps, it at least on the commercial side, it helps out a lot because sometimes they'll just be like, give me their information. It's a hands-off approach. Just like I would say, hey, they're asking about this. I told them that, and they're still not really grasping the idea. You can contact them, and then they go through everything for them, and sometimes even go to to job sites and stuff like that to handle it, where you don't have to even do anything. And I mean,
yeah.
that's more
And
time for you to do something else.
and that's what's nice about a lot of the manufacturer trainings too. They're not just like either at their factory or at a distributor or anything. A lot of your reps will go to job sites. They won't do the work for you, but they will make sure you are set up and doing it correctly. And they're also there to answer those questions while you're doing it. Um, I've seen over the past couple of years, I've definitely seen um, a huge availability in a lot of your technical sales reps and everything for companies being out more on job sites than they are doing the counter days at the distributors or doing just the trainings at the factory or something like that. Which I think is better because now you're hands on using their product and learning it, as opposed to just sitting there watching them use the product and just telling you about the product. Because you got to have the feel for each product. You know, it's not just, oh, I have the knowledge on how to do this, but there's a feel to it, at least in my mind. There, you know, like the when I did that training in Cincinnati 3 weeks ago, you know, it was the adhesive side and also the stains and finishes. And, you know, you were hands on sanding and everything. And all these guys are sitting there putting headphones in, you know, to do the sanding. I'm like, you got to hear that machine. You got to feel that machine. So I don't understand how they're doing it, you know, with headphones in, where you got to be able to hear that machine to make sure it's running correctly. You know, is it creating a chatter in the floor? You know, is something clogged? Or, you know, there's a feel and a
Yeah.
sound that you gotta get to. And it's the same as on the adhesive side when you're spreading adhesive. There's a feel to each different adhesive. So and that's where a lot of these hands-on trainings and everything come into play, I think.
I get exactly what you're saying about the hear and the feel, right? So it's not about hearing it; it's more about learning it. You're learning what is a regular, normal sound if it's operating efficiently versus when it starts to get clogged, or the RPMs are going up or low, or maybe you're losing power somewhere. I get that aspect. And to go backtrack on the reps getting out more, you're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right. Like, they have almost all the answers for every question you might have from a technical standpoint and an application standpoint.
Yeah.
And I will say that, like, the first time I had a rep come out and actually get down and dirty with us on a night job was Jared from Utseen. And that dude, that was the first. I never expected it. And not only that, our sales rep was there too, which was
Yeah.
awesome. Like, I mean, I wasn't looking at it like free labor. I asked as many questions. Like,
And, yeah, and that's the thing I've noticed too, is like even going to do the trainings or whatever, people don't ask questions. It's like they're afraid to,
yeah,
or and that's why, during a lot of those education sessions at the convention or at trainings or whatever, I will ask questions. I'll ask a difficult question. I'll ask the question I already know the answer to.
And that's
100%.
what
Because
he does. That's what he
somebody,
does all the time. He's like, I already, like you were saying, right? I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways because it was a question that you had at one point, and someone else has that question. And like even when I do the trainings, it's like, does anyone have any questions? And everyone is like, no. And then sometimes they'll approach you later on, and it's like, hey, and then they'll ask a question. It's like, man, like just if you would just ask it in front of everyone, no one's going to be like, hi, I can't believe you're asking that
yeah.
question. It's like someone else has that question too.
Well, yeah, because like at that last one I did, I was asking my questions. I already knew all the answers to it. And we took a break, and one guy came up to me. He's like, dude, I wouldn't have even thought of asking those questions. I was like, to me, they seemed like pretty basic,
yeah,
simple questions. But, you got other guys who have been doing it 15, 20 years, according to them, that they're like, I wouldn't have even thought of asking that. And that's why I ask them, and it's especially at convention or whatever, everybody's like, always stared at me like, you got any questions, Mark? And I'm not trying to start arguments or anything. It's just more of a clarification, and that's what's good with, especially attending conventions. It's not just the networking, but now you can get clarification of instructions from the manufacturers themselves, because there is a disconnect between what we're told by a manufacturer rep and what's actually listed in their instructions. And I was actually just having a discussion yesterday about a post I made on one of the forums about H joints. And I'm like, it's a weak spot. It creates a weak spot
yeah,
in a floor.
yes,
And this guy kept arguing with me. He's like, well, it's listed in their instructions. And like they show the picture of, staggers and stuff, and they have H joints in there and stair steps and stuff like that. So just to clarify my stance on it, I messaged a manufacturer, head of the technical department for one of the manufacturers. And I took a screenshot of his answer and I posted it, and the guy was still arguing with me. I was like, this is straight from the manufacturer.
yeah. It's so, and I think that that's the confusion too, right? Like, because this has come up in one of the certification classes that we did, and it is an approved install, but it's not a preferred install. Like, and there's reasons why. Like you just said, the integrity and the strength of the locking mechanisms is compromised because now you're creating more linear weak points instead of it being
Yeah.
static.
And From the answer that I got from this particular rep was, it creates a lot more stress on those joints when because you figure you got this movement. Now it gives it a direct line straight
Hmm.
across, and it does create a lot more stress in that specific area. So it is going to end up creating gaps in the floor, and it's going to start to fail. Just the same with stair steps. It creates a fault line where it's putting stress on that pattern, as opposed to a random stagger, whether it's a floating floor, nailed down hardwood, something like that. Not only is it more aesthetically pleasing having a random pattern stagger, but it actually keys it and locks it in better and tighter. Now you're not just relying on a locking system. Now you have the full board itself acting as a locking system as opposed to just that small locking system.
Right. And so if some people don't understand that aspect, you got to look at it like I try to find something to compare it to, right? Like a control joint. There's a reason why they go and they strategically cut at the columns instead of letting it crack everywhere, right? It's
Yeah.
strategic. And I know that the H joints, lining them up like that, essentially is the same concept as a control joint in my eyes. I mean, that's the way to explain it to someone. It's like that's an intentional weak spot. You don't want to do that. You
Yeah.
can avoid that doing the install.
Well,
Um,
that's where they brought up the tile look, like floating LVP, the tile look. And my thought on that is, and I haven't discussed it with any reps or anything like that, but at least on the tile, those are a wider board. You're looking at 12, 18, 16 inches wide by 2 foot. In some instances anymore, they're 3 foot. Um, but that wider plank or that wider board, it's going to dissipate some of that energy a little bit more. But I think what that does then too is it could create some of that cupping that, you know, everybody says is moisture, but I think it's pressure, where a lot of that movement happening in a wider board dissipates more towards the center, causing your edges to kind of curl up a little bit. Again,
And
that's just my
this is
thought,
where
but
education kind of backfires a little bit, right? Because we know enough to start making our own assumptions, but then we
yeah,
don't know the actual cause of it, and then you get just kind of got to rely on what the manufacturer tells you. And this is where a lot of the installers will have pushback, right? Well, they're
yeah,
saying that it's failing because of this when I think it's this, but dependent inspectors out there too, right? And that's where educating yourself and going to these events helps out, because you can actually talk to these inspectors, you talk to these manufacturers, you talk to these tech guys, and then you get stories where, I mean, I've talked to them where they said that they've had failures because in the middle of, they're selling, and it was a click together plank. They were selling a bunch of it, and then they switched manufacturers, or they switched not the manufacturers, but the locking mechanism. So they went from one to the other without even telling anyone, without telling any of the tech reps or anything. And I was like, man, they didn't even update the installation instructions or nothing. He said, Daniel, nothing. I didn't know anything. No one knew anything. And it wasn't until they started having issues is when they found out.
yeah, yeah. And you run into that quite often, but that's where, the education part as an installer comes into play. Because a lot of these, everybody always complains about drop lock LVPs or laminates or whatever. They're actually really
I'll
good.
complain about them too.
Well, thing is, they're really good and strong, but it's only as good. It doesn't matter if it's the I4F, the Valinge, or the Unilin Uniclick system. You know, if your floor is not within proper tolerance, they're all going to fail. And
that
that's
is it right
again
there.
where education is going to come in, because you know, everybody knows 3/16 and 10-foot radius or whatever, 1/8 and 6 foot, 8 foot, whatever it is, but doing the trainings, you're actually hands on doing it then. You're tested on it. You're doing it yourself, not just being told this is what it needs to be. Now you have an idea how it needs to be done and what proper steps to take to do that and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable and what's going to be your best course of action for the application. So and that's the one thing I get tired of is everyone. I'm tired of the complaining from everyone. It's like, well, I failed this inspection because they said it's installer area, they're full of crap. Well, dude, deal with it. You screwed up because you don't know you didn't do it correctly. That's where the
Well,
education comes in, and the education is there. And I've heard it from all the certification boards, the training sessions, manufacturers themselves. You know, that they're getting a lot more involved over the past few years. So they don't want you to fail. They don't want to have the installer shell out the money for these replacements. They want to see it done correctly. And that's where the training and the education comes into play.
right, and not like I said, in the beginning, it's not just the trainings that you have to go to, right? There's multiple avenues where you can get education, you can educate yourself. Just think in terms of like the CRI 104, 105, right?
Mhm.
It's right online for anyone to read. They have documents out there that are free, and yet people still don't know that there's standards out there that you have to follow. If
Just
you're
had that conversation. Ooh,
if
Yeah.
you're a commercial installer and you don't know what, F710 is, ASTM F710, then you're already behind. And I mean, granted, these documents you do have to pay for, right? But you pay a small fee and you get access to basically any document in that one vertical market that you need, right? So if you do want to know what ASTM F710 is, then you have 18, what is it, 1869, 2170 on all these moistures. And like, there's so much information out there that all you have to do is look for it.
Yeah, because I think the ASTM, I think it's $60 to get
I
access
think,
to
I think it's
one of
75 now.
and I think it's like 125 to have access to all of them for the year. Something like that.
Something
Um,
like that. Like I said, I don't know, but I mean, if you join, then you have access to all of them, right? And
yeah.
I mean,
And that
once
way
you
you have
start,
that information to go back on, whether it's, you know, especially if you're a subcontractor, and you're subbing out to a store or something. Now you have that information. You're not just fighting with the salesman or the owner of the store. It's like, hey, this isn't correct, and here's my backing of it.
right? And
And
then once you start getting into, more levels, there's actually softwares out there that keep track of everything for you. Because we've been using Floor Cloud for a while, and you can go through and there's what products are you using on this project, and then you don't even have to know, like, you just input the product and they
yeah,
keep track of it for you. It's like once you have it in there, you start getting alerts all the time, and it's like temperature,
yeah,
humidity, dew point, like these things are not inspect for this product, and you can go on there and see what that product calls for.
yeah. And Floor Cloud's nice because it automatically updates itself when there's changes or updates to products. It's a great system, and I
It
think
is it.
it's not that bad. If like for me, if I was working by myself, it would be a little pricey for me. But if you're a larger, especially if you do a lot of commercial work, or if you do a lot of new construction, and you have
wood,
multiple crews out there,
wood
it
flooring, even wood, even
uh,
even in the residential setting, dude.
yes, Yeah,
Good.
for wood floors, because especially wood floors, if you deliver your material ahead of time like you're supposed to for acclimation, but say it's delivered and it's in the house and they paint it, they get all the
Mm.
painting done, man, that
Yeah.
changes moisture content real quickly.
Yeah. A lot of people don't think about that.
I mean, just
Yeah.
think of it in terms of getting it in there to acclimate, right? And then you show up and start doing a bunch of self-leveling. That water's got to go somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, and back to the ASTM standards. How many people actually know that there was a new ASTM standard put out there? I think it was like 3 months ago, 4 months ago, uh,
For
allowing
pH
for
testing.
no for approval of roll-on moisture barriers under LVPs. They actually made an ASTM standard about that.
And people just don't know. But I am gonna play a floor cloud video right now. It is a great product, and like I said, we have it on a few projects right now, and it's definitely worth its weight in gold, man.
Oh, definitely.
Real-time monitoring of your job site conditions via desktop or mobile device. No more manual checking for temperature, humidity, or even dew point. No need for base stations, Wi-Fi, or external power sources. Simply scan the QR code on the front of your sensors and you're up and running with the most accurate and innovative site monitoring system in the flooring industry. Dispatch your crews with confidence and reduce your climate-related installation issues. Floor Cloud, now you know.
Yeah, so we're on a project right now where it's right in the manufacturer's documents that said you have to keep track of the ambient conditions throughout the entire project, or else basically, I mean, if you don't, your warranty is not there, right?
Yeah.
And,
Well,
some people have the ability, like we have in our warehouse right now, the the sensor out there that will shoot it back to us in here, right?
mhm.
But that was the basis of Floor Cloud, is that you don't have to visit the site. You can log on and get all that information.
Right, but
Well,
Click,
anything is better than nothing.
but
but
yeah,
the money it saves a company too of sending a crew out there and they can't do anything because the conditions, that's a lot of wasted money. And now you have guys complaining because they're not making any money because they're not working that day. So it's a very ingenious idea.
Right. So
And
Mark,
it's all
like,
based off of cell phone services or something, or cell phone
yeah,
towers.
it's got its own, SIM card and stuff in there, and it shoots everything out all by itself. But we're talking about education,
Yeah.
and you said that you're self-taught. So what was your kind of turning point where you were like, I'm gonna start getting the most education that I can?
So it's actually kind of funny because it was a little over 2 years ago when I actually went and got certified myself. Because for the longest time I was against certifications because I'd run into a lot of guys that were certified, and I'm like, well, that doesn't seem right what you're doing. But it got to a point where I was rounding 30 years at that time of installing, and I heard it pretty much throughout my career. Is like, am I as good as everybody says I am? And do what I know, is it accurate? And that's why I went and did it. Was more to test myself and challenge myself. And then when I actually went to that certification, I actually learned quite a bit. And it was kind of humbling when we did the hand skills and everything like that. It was pretty humbling. But the amount of information that I didn't know um, really upped my game over the last few years. But now I take that information and now I go back and talk with all our other installers and subs when I show up at the warehouse, because they come to me and they ask me, "Hey, what would you do with this?" Well, here's why you need to do it this way. It's passing that education on also. And that's why I ended up doing it.
like you said, passing it on, and that's one of the things too about certification and training and getting out there is, it's one thing to be credible because you are you know, coined a good installer or decent at a certain discipline in your area, but it's another thing when it's recognized by a committee or a national program where you have your certificate of completion or certification
Mhm.
that is more validated by the industry instead of the people that you surround yourself with. And that's
Yeah,
it
and
sounds weird, but it gives you that sense of completion as well, right? Like
it totally did, and it really changed my outlook on what I do and what I've spent. My entire I've been doing this more than half my life now, and it, I was getting burned out on the install side for many, many years. And that kind of rejuvenated me. And now it's like, okay, everybody said I was good. Now let's be better. It kind of gave me that, let's get more involved. Let's get this education out there. And, and it's not, I always said it was an arrogance thing at one point, and it's not necessarily an arrogance thing, but like you said, it's more of a sense of accomplishment than anything. But it did kind of rejuvenate my, I guess it's a passion still.
Well, you talk
um,
about arrogance, right? And that's what Dwayne told me. He said, I thought you were really arrogant when I first met you. And then I got to know you and I realized that it wasn't that, right? And it was never meant to, I was never meant to come off as arrogant because I'm not the one that was saying that I was really good or the best at anything. Like you said, it was everyone else that was kind of pushing that validation onto me. And
yeah,
then once you realize, you're like, man, maybe I am kind of good. And then it's like, where else can we go with this, right? And
exactly.
that's why, in the classes for the NAFCT and the last one when we met down there, when you came over there to what
Yeah,
city was that in? Columbus, right?
Columbus.
yeah,
Uh they asked me, why are you doing this? Why are you teaching this class? And it's like, man, I got to get this stuff out of my head because Flash Cove and Heat Weld is that dying art, and people need to know how to do it because you're talking life and death situations sometimes if there's a bunch of stuff that's getting underneath something in a surgery room. And all
yeah,
it takes is, that being pushed into the air and now it's in someone's body.
yeah.
Yeah, the
So,
bacteria. Yeah,
And actually, I when I stopped and talked to you and Sonny there, I loved that class. One, because yes, as you said, it is a dying skill. There's not much around it. But what I liked about that class is you had two guys from the manufacturer. You had another guy who's been doing Flash Code for many, many years, but wanted to, you know, up his skills because he had a big job coming up. Plus, you had some younger kids there. That was the perfect scenario to push some kind of education and training. And right there is the perfect example of it, because you have guys who work for the manufacturer but needs to know how to actually install it. A guy who's just, you know, redoing his skill set after doing it for so many times. And then the younger kids, who there's money to be made in Flash Cove now because nobody does it. So that was
oh
I
no,
really enjoyed.
people do it. They just they don't do it correctly, and that's where things need to change, right? It's
Yeah,
educating yourself and knowing you're not just going into the building and throwing the floor down. It's, hey, like, this is a really sensitive area, and if this isn't right, I could potentially cause issues in someone's life. And it's looking at it like that, and that's what I kind of drive to people when I'm talking to them. And it's like, it's not just going in and slapping something in. It's talking to infection control and knowing that so many deaths happen because of just sweeping and the air, getting dust in the air and then that traveling through the HVAC. It's knowing things like that. So when we're talking education, we're not just talking about how to install the flooring. we're also talking about what are you affecting when you're going into these places. I mean, just look at, in residential too, you go in there and you start sanding something, and it's like that dust is going to settle somewhere.
Yeah.
And knowing that, you know, everything that you do affects someone else.
Exactly. And that's what's funny about, like even on, any of the multiple forums that are out there, listen to some of these guys talk, and I don't comment much or anything, but it's like, man, this is why we need training. You know,
Right.
they don't realize, LVPs and laminates were pushed for many, many years as a DIY homeowner friendly to install and everything. But why are the so-called professionals having such an issue with it? That's where the training comes in handy.
Right.
It's like, are you just a DIY homeowner who's making money on this? How about you do it correctly? You're not going to have the issues that everybody's having lately. Do it correctly. How are you
We
going to
got
know how to do it correctly unless you do some of the trainings?
we got Jesus and Jorge on here. I do want to shout out to Jorge because this guy just got married over the weekend.
Congratulations, Jorge.
Congratulations, bro.
So you just mentioned about the DIY, right? And I just had a conversation with a client about a week ago, week and a half ago, and she had me on. I was on speakerphone with her and her husband, and she was talking about they did. She said the bathroom was just installed not too long ago, and it's failing, and blah blah blah. And I didn't at that point. I didn't know the husband was the one who did it, so I
Yeah.
threw him under the bus a little bit, right? But not like in a bad way. It's just that we're DIYers, homeowners are still subject to the same standards as the professional.
Yes.
And what separates a DIYer from a professional is the fact that they are willing to educate themselves. They are willing to ask the questions. They are willing to practice with material before they install it. They're willing to go through all of that additional work to educate themselves to be better for you at the end of the day. And if you're one of the installers that you just kind of do it as you go, right? You're not doing yourselves any favors. You're keeping your closed mind, and you could be
They're
better.
not
You could be more efficient.
they're not separating themselves from the DIY crowd.
Correct.
And that's, to me, that's not a professional. And that's where I get hypocritical sometimes, is if you don't keep educating yourself and trying to do better and keeping up with the changes in the industry, to me that's not professional. But yet the hypocritical part is I will never call myself a professional.
I
um,
I, I think it
just for the
changes
same
a little bit too
fact.
much. Yeah, I think the information and
I think that some of
everything
these
changes.
homeowners actually educate themselves better than some of these installers, to be honest with you, because the information is out there and they do so much research before they get anyone in there that they already kind of know what is going on before you even step foot in there, right?
Yes, but the downfall of that also is homeowners think they know it all then. Because again, they are watching the YouTube videos and stuff like that, where there's a lot of companies out there making videos and everything, and I just shake my head because they're doing pressure sensitive adhesive over a sheet vinyl with no kind of prep, or they're spreading adhesive over all the paint and everything that's all over the floor and
I mean,
drywall mud. I'm
yeah,
like,
and
no.
there's some of the biggest influencers out there like on
Yeah.
social media that are doing stuff like that, and they're making a bunch of money by putting these videos out, and they're making even more money because they're getting these jobs done all super fast, and people think that they're doing a great job, and it's normalized, right? But that's where when things like this happen, you have to be educated enough to know that you can go in there and say, hey, this is what's going on. I can
Yeah.
provide you with these documents, and
Yeah, and
and
that's where
go that
it's
route.
not just the education of, proper subfloor prep, how to install a product correctly, anything like that. it's also being able to talk with a homeowner. And that's where I think, some other training needs done for a lot of contractors is being able to go in, you know, be able to talk to a homeowner, keep their mind at ease. But like I go into a job on the first day, I'll look around, a couple questions I have here or there, but then it's like, all right, here's what I'm going to do today. Today's going to be demo and prep. Here's how I'm going to prep. Here's what I'm going to do because we need flat. We don't need level. We need flat because everybody's always like, well, the floor's not level. Doesn't need to be level. I need flat. And then having that discussion with them, it does put a lot of homeowners more at ease when you could take some of this education that you're learning and all this information that's correct and pass that on to a homeowner. That does put their mind at ease and more confident and comfortable of having you in their house. Because like I go into jobs where people are spending 40, 50, $60,000 on a brand new floor and install. It does make it a little easier for them to spend that kind of money knowing that it's going to be installed correctly.
That's that
Uh,
value, the value that's added to it, and the
yeah,
prevention. And you just said something that separates. I feel that separates us a little bit from some of the other installers around. And I'm saying installers because some of the other companies have all the literature already in place, right? It's you are already presenting solutions for issues or problems that haven't even arose yet, right? You're
yeah,
you're preventing because you understand what you might hit, and you're explaining everything up front. And you're right. Some people it's hard to do that, right? Because they just look at the overall dollar amount. But if
yeah.
if they understand that their investment is also your best interest, then it's a different story. They do accept the understanding. I don't want to say higher charge, right? Because sometimes you don't even need it, right? It's just if I hit the scenario, this is what could happen. Um, don't mean to scare people away, but at the same time, I want to be transparent.
Right, because that you're
Yeah.
educating them based on the education that you have, right? And it's like I'm not giving you this education so you pick me. I'm giving you this education so that you know and your project doesn't fail whether you go with me or not.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And I've
Jesus
done
is
that a few
saying
times.
that he talked to you about something last week when
Yeah, I actually mentioned it earlier. He was the one who contacted me last Saturday about a product, and
Hmm.
yeah, I called I called the rep, and he answered Saturday morning. He was sitting at breakfast with his wife. I was like, sorry to bother you, but they answer. If you, and that's the relationship you got to build with your reps. It's I called him with a question at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. He answered and gave me the information I needed so I could pass that on. If I didn't know that rep and I just happened to have his number because I met him at a, counter day or something, they might not necessarily answer. They're like,
they
I don't remember this guy or something.
sometimes they still answer, and then sometimes you have a rep that moves to a different position or a different territory, and then you just contact them anyways because you've got that relationship.
Yeah.
They're a rep, but they're a friend still, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's the importance of knowing your reps and the technical guys and everything. Um, is you do have that Saturday, Sunday job or something that, you might need an answer right then and there because it is a weekend, that things may not be open or it's like, oh, did I just really screw the pooch on this one? And, you know, what's this going to cost me? Those guys can give you that answer on how to correct that, without having the delay in a job or something that's going to end up costing you a lot of money.
And if you're contacting your rep, that means you probably already tried to do some research and you're just trying to get clarification. So you are educating yourself. And that's really all we try and say and put out there is you got to start somewhere. You don't know everything. And the importance of education is knowing that you are doing everything so that way if an inspector is called in on that project, all they can do is say, nope, everything looks good. Must be our stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. If you're not learning, you're lying to yourself. That's for sure.
Oh, definitely. And that's why I hate that I've been doing it this way for 30 years. That drives me up a wall.
And not only
It's like
that, right?
I haven't
It's
30 years. I haven't done it the same way for 30 years.
well, and just with tooling itself, right? And I mean, do tools from 30 years ago still work amazing? Absolutely. But there's new tools out to make everything easier. So,
Yeah,
and
and actually,
the same thing with adhesives and things like that. I mean, I was on a project the other day and there's a carpenter. He was like, I did flooring for like 8 years back in the day, and he used to do a bunch of sheet vinyl. He's like, do they still do the two-part epoxy stuff underneath all the seams? And it's like, man, that hasn't been a thing for a while now. He was like, yeah,
yeah.
you could see how long ago
What
it
what's that
was.
adhesive? That adhesive
It's
that
it was the
oh
Armstrong thing, right?
no, whatever B Weezy used to say all the time.
Oh, Monobond.
Monobond.
Oh, I haven't heard that in a long time.
Just Monobond and we're good.
Yeah, because actually, when I was at convention this year during the trade show, just talking with all the manufacturers and the reps and the tool guys and everything, they are starting to listen to installers, and they're changing stuff to make it easier. And if you don't know what those changes are that they're making, like I said, man, you got to educate yourself on those changes, and they are starting to listen, and they're making good headway. Like some of the new tools that Robert's come out with, Crane's come out with some good ones. Our good friend Ray Knapp, man, some of his stuff, that's ingenious. But if you don't educate yourself on those new tools, you're going to do more harm to yourself and than what they're used for. It's I just don't understand why guys aren't doing it.
Well, it's one of those things too, where right, like it costs us as installers more money to do things the right way and to keep up with all the trends and the changes. And that's what the manufacturers are starting to do with the tooling is they want us to make more money, so they got to put more thought into the process. What better way to get answers and better tooling than to ask the installers, why aren't you using my tools?
Yeah. Well,
And
a lot of it. Go
they
ahead.
try and make things more user friendly, right? And make it so that you're more efficient. But a lot of people just think that they're trying to make it so that way everything is geared more towards the DIYers, which it kind of is because when you don't educate yourself, that's basically all you are is a DIYer.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like talking with some of those reps at the convention. Yeah, they are tired of denying claims because it's not installed correctly. It's because that ends up costing them money too. They are dumping a ton of money into trainings and certifications and stuff like that. And I heard one rep down at the summit back in March or February, whenever Sonny had that. It was like, we don't have to, but they're dumping more and more money, and more manufacturers are starting to do it because they see a need for it. And, it's available. A lot of guys, they're too busy working. They come home at night, they're still doing estimates, they're doing measures. They're working late hours, so the last thing they want to do is sit on a computer. So that's why I'm writing this article, is to make it easy. So now you have all the information right there in one spot, and all you have to do then is just click a web page link or
Right.
something.
And these, magazines are free subscriptions, guys, like
Mhm.
CFI. What is there's flooring specialist, floor trends and installation,
Floor
pro
covering.
installer.
Uh, NTCA does some stuff. They have their was a tile letter. Plus, you have all the different podcasts. You know, you got
Yeah.
yours, you got Kyle's, you got Floor Talk.
NWFA has a few of them.
Yeah, yeah. There's Floor Talk. There's NTCA. I can't remember what theirs is called. But yeah, there's so many resources out there. It's not even necessarily just reading something. You know, it's like a lot of these guys sit there and make their comments and go on the flooring forums and stuff on Facebook. Take some of that time and go to one of these magazines. They're online. They're all online. Go and read those articles and actually learn something instead of getting a
Jorge,
lot some of
Jorge
the
said that he's gonna make his own magazine, and it's gonna be called Floor Hack Magazine.
yeah.
And all their work. That one will probably get read.
Yeah, that one will
as dumb as
definitely
it
get read.
sounds,
Those are the
100%.
well, uh there's one of those forums, floor hacks or something like that. I actually got put on it once because I was doing a bathroom at my own house that I was renting. And the toilet, they 3/4 subfloored around the toilet. And it was old cast iron. So there was an old cast iron pipe, and I'm like, I don't know plumbing. I'm not raising that pipe up, so I just floored around the toilet, put a
Dude, they
transition
didn't.
around it. It looked good, but it
You're
definitely
looking at
wasn't
it all
done
wrong. That's all wrong. You're looking at it wrong. They didn't 3/4 subfloor around it. They recessed the toilet. That's what they
right. Pretty
did.
much, because I think they did take the toilet, set it on the plywood, because there was no
They
seams.
traced it. They traced it.
I was like, that's pretty impressive.
Sometimes and that's the education thing too, right? Like some of the education that you get comes with experience.
Yeah,
And we're not plumbers, but I do know that there are other ways and to go about adding height to the flange, right? There are a lot of other ways to do that. And
yeah, yeah.
if you can't, well, no, you call somebody.
It
I
was
think
a
you just
rental,
call a
so I was,
plumber for that.
Yeah, the
yeah,
plumber. Yeah.
yeah,
We don't
yeah.
mess around with that.
It was a rental, so I didn't really care. They got a new floor for free, so
But you got to recess it like that, but you got to bring it back a little bit and then make sure you put a black light around the ring of the
yeah.
recess. So that way, when bacteria builds up, you see it and you know when to clean the bathroom.
I was just
But
figuring so I could see when I go to at night and when I wake up in the middle of the night.
well, we're about at the end of this, man. I appreciate you being on today, and talking. And I mean, a lot of us started off with our education kind of the same way you did, and just there's a point where you got to know that you don't know everything, and that the information is out there, and a lot of it is at no cost, right? And that just pushes you into actually going out and venturing and actually paying for some of this other education, but you got to start somewhere. And I mean, education is there, man. CRI, like I said, the CRI 104, 105 is free, and a lot of these carpet guys don't even know that it exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's uh Ardex. Theirs is free. They put you
Yep.
up, they feed you everything. Lobovacal, theirs is free. They put you up and
I think a lot of the manufacturers, if you just want to do their stuff, a lot of it is actually free. A
You
matter
just
of
got to get,
it is just getting there.
well, a lot that's with like your adhesives and your finishes and stains and stuff. Stuff like Mohawk and Tarket. If you have a bunch of issues, if you're struggling with their certain products, you would actually have to go through the distributor, where you buy their product from. But they'll send a rep out and do like I talked to Phil Gladden during our meeting the other day. Um, it's like an 8-hour class, and they go over all of their products on how to correctly install it and everything like that.
I mean,
Um,
even the distributors get on their mailing list so that way when they are having something, you can go do it and
exactly.
stop saying I can't do it that day because I'll be working. It's you know what?
Yeah.
I have to be there that day. Like I said, it's you have to start looking at it like I can't afford to do this and start saying I can't afford not to do this.
Yeah, because it's cheaper, even if you got to pay for a training, that's still cheaper than having to replace a job.
Well, not only that, the the value in it. It's still cheaper than losing a client that could be with you for years, than losing a
Exactly.
repeat customer. And that's the same thing with manufacturers, right? Like offering the training and education. They don't want to keep getting respect and losing a potential contract with A&E. They'd rather stay relevant. One bad installer gives a product a bad name. They
Yep.
remove it from their library and they move on to the next thing. So
Yeah.
help yourself out. But yeah, we should probably close this out. And I guess my closing statement for today would be is uh, piggybacking off what Daniel said, but instead of looking at it like do it for your, it's that you can't not you can't afford not to do it. It's just, you know what, do it for your clients, do it for the end users, do it for the people. If you're invested and you're all in, then be invested, be all in, do it for the life of your business, your company, your family. You know, it's going to give you a lot more in return than what you're ever going to pay out for the education.
Mark, you got anything to close this out?
No, just appreciate you guys asking me to come on, man. It was a good time.
Yeah, don't get off when we end the live
Oh
stream. We'll
yeah,
just talk for a second. We always forget to say that beforehand. If you guys found this, podcast helpful, definitely share it around. Give us a like, give us a dislike. We don't care what you do as long as you're interacting with us, because if we're doing something that you don't like, we need to know so that way we can be better. Just like the education, right? It's you don't know what you don't know. So let us know, and we will see you guys next week.